Most people think if food is heated until it's steaming hot, it's automatically safe to eat again. That single assumption is one of the most common food safety mistakes in the world, and almost nobody questions it. Here's a number worth sitting with. Every year, tens of millions of people get sick from food that was cooked correctly the first time, but handled wrong the second time. Not from bad ingredients, not from spoiled food that smelled off or looked strange, from leftovers that looked completely fine, smelled completely normal, and were reheated until they were hot all the way through. That's what makes this topic so overlooked. There's no dramatic warning sign, no bad smell, no strange color. Just an invisible window of time, and what happens to your food inside that window, long before it ever touches your stove or microwave again. Today we're going to walk through 4 everyday foods, foods that sit in almost every refrigerator on Earth right now. Rice, chicken, leafy greens like spinach, and eggs, foods that are, by every nutritional measure, excellent choices. And yet each one carries its own specific set of rules when it comes to storing and reheating it safely. Stay with me until the end, because the 4th food on this list is the one most health-conscious people get wrong without ever realizing it. Before we go further, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about being afraid of your own kitchen. It's not about throwing out perfectly good food or living in constant worry about what's in your fridge. This is about understanding a few simple, well-established facts of food science. Facts that, once you know them, take almost no extra effort to apply. Small adjustments, big protection. That's really what this comes down to. If you find this kind of practical, science-backed information useful, go ahead and hit like and subscribe now. It genuinely helps more people find videos like this one, and I'd love to have you along for future topics. Now, let's get into it. What actually happens when you reheat food? To understand why some foods need more care than others, it helps to understand what happens to food between the first time you cook it and the second time you heat it up. When you cook something for the first time, heat changes the structure of proteins, starches, and fats in fairly predictable ways. Proteins unfold. Starches absorb water and soften. Fats melt and blend into whatever they're cooked in. These are normal, well-understood chemical processes, and they're part of what makes cooked food taste good and digest easily. But once that food is done cooking and it starts to cool down, something else begins. The moment food drops below a certain temperature, it enters what food safety experts sometimes call the danger zone. Roughly between 40 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. In that range, any bacteria present in the food, and there's almost always some present, even in food that looks perfectly clean, can begin multiplying. Not slowly, rapidly. Under the right conditions, bacteria can double in number every 20 minutes. Here's the part that surprises people. Reheating doesn't undo that. Heat can kill many types of bacteria, yes. But some bacteria produce toxins while they're multiplying, and certain toxins are heat stable. That means even after you microwave your leftovers until they're steaming, the toxin can still be sitting right there in the food, completely unaffected by the heat. The bacteria might be dead. The toxin they left behind isn't. This single fact, that heat kills bacteria but doesn't always destroy what the bacteria already produced, is the foundation for almost everything we're about to cover. Food 1. Rice. Rice feeds more people on this planet than any other single food. Billions of people eat it as a staple, often multiple times a day. And leftover rice is one of the most commonly reheated foods anywhere in the world. Here's something most people don't know. Raw rice can naturally contain spores of a bacterium called Bacillus cereus. This isn't contamination from poor handling. It's simply present in rice as it grows in the field. Cooking kills the active bacteria, but the spores can survive the cooking process. If cooked rice is then left sitting out at room temperature, those spores can germinate and multiply, and as they multiply, they can produce a toxin. This toxin is genuinely heat resistant. It can survive being reheated in a way the bacteria themselves cannot. If someone eats rice that's been sitting out too long, they can experience a fast-acting stomach illness, sometimes within just a few hours, even though the rice looked and smelled completely normal and was reheated thoroughly. This is well documented in food safety literature, and it's exactly why professional kitchens follow strict rules about how quickly rice needs to be cooled and refrigerated after cooking. So here's a story that illustrates this well. Picture a busy parent who makes a big pot of rice on Sunday to save time during the week. It sits on the stove, covered, cooling slowly as the family finishes dinner and cleans up. By the time anyone thinks to put it away, 2, 3 hours have gone by. It goes in the fridge that night. Nothing looks wrong. Days later, it gets reheated for lunch, and within hours, someone in that household isn't feeling well. Nobody thinks to blame the rice, because the rice was reheated until it was hot, but the window that mattered had already closed long before it ever went in the microwave. So what should you actually do? It's simple, and it doesn't require anything special. Cool rice quickly. Spreading it out on a wide, shallow container instead of leaving it in a deep pot helps it cool faster and more evenly. Get it into the refrigerator within about an hour of cooking, not left out for hours while things get cleaned up. Once refrigerated, aim to eat it within about 3 to 4 days. And when you reheat it, make sure it's heated evenly all the way through, not just warmed on the outside while the center stays cool. And here's a detail worth mentioning, related to another well-established piece of food chemistry. Starchy foods like rice and potatoes, when cooked at very high dry heat, such as frying or roasting until deeply browned, can form a compound called acrylamide, which health agencies classify as a probable carcinogen based on animal studies at high exposure levels. This isn't really a reheating issue. It's more relevant to how starchy foods are cooked in the first place, particularly frying or high-heat roasting. But it's a good reminder that gentler cooking methods, like boiling or steaming rice and reheating with steam or a little added water rather than dry high heat, tend to be the better long-term habit either way. I'd genuinely love to hear from you on this one. Which of these 4 foods do you reheat the most in your own kitchen? Drop a comment and let me know. And if you've ever had a moment like the one I just described, where leftovers sat out a little longer than they should have, you're definitely not alone. It happens to almost. Food 2. Chicken. Chicken is the most widely recommended lean protein on the planet. Doctors, dietitians, and health-conscious families build entire meal plans around it, and for good reason. It's an excellent source of protein with relatively little saturated fat compared to many other meats. But chicken carries its own specific storage risk, and it's one worth taking seriously because, unlike rice, the concern here isn't a resistant toxin. It's simply how easily and quickly bacteria like Salmonella and Campylobacter can grow on poultry that isn't cooled and stored properly. Cooked chicken that sits out at room temperature for more than about 2 hours starts to move into that same danger zone we talked about earlier. And because chicken is dense and often cut into thick pieces, it can actually take longer to cool down in the fridge than people expect, especially if it's stored in a deep container with a lid on tight, trapping heat inside. Think about meal prepping. Someone spends their Sunday afternoon cooking a big batch of chicken breasts for the week ahead. A genuinely great habit for staying on track with healthy eating. They portion it into containers while it's still fairly warm, stack the containers in the fridge, and move on with their evening. The problem is, chicken cooling inside a sealed container, especially stacked with other containers around it, can stay in that warmer temperature range far longer than a thin layer of food cooling on a plate. Days later, it's still perfectly fine to eat, reheated and enjoyed without issue. But the habit of packing food away while it's still warm and dense is one of the more common ways safe storage windows get pushed further than they should. The fix here is refreshingly simple. Let chicken cool for a short period, no more than 30 minutes or so, uncovered, before sealing it in the fridge. Cut larger pieces into smaller portions before storing, so heat escapes faster and the whole batch cools more evenly. Use shallow containers instead of deep ones. And when you reheat, use a food thermometer if you have one, aiming for an internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit, which ensures anything that could have grown during storage is neutralized. One more practical note, and this connects to something we touched on with rice. High-heat cooking methods, particularly grilling or pan-searing meat until it's very well done and charred, can produce compounds called heterocyclic amines. These have been studied extensively in relation to diet and long-term health, and the general guidance from nutrition researchers is straightforward. Cooking meat thoroughly is important for food safety, but avoiding excessive charring and trimming away any heavily blackened bits is a reasonable, low-effort habit that fits well into an overall pattern of eating for longevity. If this is helping you think differently about your kitchen habits, a quick like helps this reach more people looking for the same information. Now let's keep going, because the next one might genuinely surprise you. Food 3. Spinach and leafy greens. Spinach is one of the most celebrated vegetables in nutrition. It's packed with iron, folate, magnesium, and antioxidants, and it's recommended constantly by doctors, dietitians, and nutritionists alike, and they're absolutely right to recommend it. Here's something less commonly discussed, though. Spinach, along with vegetables like celery, beets, and Swiss chard, naturally contains higher levels of nitrates than most other vegetables. In their natural state, and in the amounts found in a normal diet full of vegetables, these nitrates are considered part of a healthy eating pattern, and some research even links dietary nitrates from vegetables to benefits for blood pressure and circulation. The nuance worth knowing is this. Once cooked spinach is stored, particularly if it sits at room temperature for a while, or is kept in the fridge for several days, naturally occurring bacteria can begin converting some of those nitrates into nitrites. This is a real documented chemical process. It's also worth knowing that this exact conversion, nitrates to nitrites, is part of why food safety agencies pay close attention to how cured and processed meats are made, since that's a very different and more concentrated exposure pathway. Processed meats like bacon, sausages, and deli meats are classified by international health authorities as a known cancer risk specifically because of how nitrites are used in processing them, combined with other factors in how those meats are prepared. For a vegetable like spinach cooked at home, the amounts involved are much smaller, and the overall guidance from food safety researchers isn't to fear spinach. It's simply to treat cooked leafy greens the way you'd treat any perishable delicate food. Eat it fresh when you can. If you have leftovers, keep them refrigerated and eat them within a day or two rather than letting them sit for a week. And when possible, enjoy leftover cooked greens cold in something like a salad or a wrap rather than repeatedly reheating them. Here's a relatable scenario. Someone commits to eating healthier and cooks a big batch of sautéed spinach on Sunday to have ready throughout the week, which is a genuinely smart habit. But by Thursday or Friday, that same batch, now 4 or 5 days old, gets reheated again for dinner. Nothing about it seems different. It still tastes fine. But the guidance here is really about timing more than danger. Fresher is simply better when it comes to delicate, quick-cooking vegetables like this, and eating them within a day or two of cooking is an easy habit that keeps you getting the most benefit with the least concern. Food 4. Eggs. This is the one that surprises almost everyone because eggs have such a strong reputation as one of the healthiest, simplest foods available. And that reputation is well earned. Eggs contain all 9 essential amino acids, they're rich in choline for brain health, and they contain antioxidants like lutein and zeaxanthin that support eye health. The issue with eggs isn't safety in the same dramatic sense as rice or chicken. It's more about quality, texture, and a slower kind of chemical change that happens with repeated heating. Eggs contain fat concentrated mostly in the yolk, and that fat is sensitive to oxidation, a natural chemical process that happens whenever fat is exposed to heat and air over time. When an egg is cooked once, a small amount of this oxidation naturally occurs, and it's a normal part of cooking. But when a cooked egg, especially scrambled eggs or a cooked egg dish, is stored, refrigerated, and then reheated again, particularly at high heat like a microwave on full power, that oxidation process continues and accelerates. The practical result is mostly about how the eggs turn out. Reheated eggs often become rubbery, lose moisture, and can take on an off flavor. And researchers who study food oxidation generally recommend minimizing repeated high heat exposure for fat-containing foods like eggs simply as good practice, the same general principle that applies to reheating any fat-rich food multiple times. There's also a simple food safety layer here that's easy to overlook. Hard-boiled eggs, if left unpeeled, actually keep quite well in the fridge, often for about a week, because the shell offers some natural protection. But once peeled, or once eggs are cooked into a dish like a scramble or a quiche, they should be treated like any other protein, refrigerated promptly and eaten within a few days. Picture someone who boils a dozen eggs on Sunday for quick protein snacks throughout the week, a great habit for staying consistent with healthy eating. If they peel all of them right away for convenience, those peeled eggs have a shorter safe window than if they'd been left in their shells and peeled fresh each day. It's a small adjustment, but it makes a real difference in both food safety and how good the eggs taste by the end of the week. So here's what actually works. Eat eggs fresh whenever it's convenient to do so. If you're meal prepping hard-boiled eggs, leave the shells on until you're ready to eat them. If you have leftover cooked egg dishes, reheat them gently, using lower heat and shorter bursts if you're using a microwave. rather than blasting them on high until they're piping hot. And if you can, enjoy leftover egg dishes cold or just gently warmed, rather than repeatedly reheated to a full boil of heat each time. So let's step back and look at the full picture. 4 foods, 4 everyday staples, each with its own small set of rules, but all of them pointing toward the same underlying idea. Rice needs to be cooled quickly and stored within about an hour of cooking, because of naturally occurring bacteria that can produce a heat-resistant toxin if it's left sitting out too long. Chicken needs to be cooled properly in shallow containers and reheated to a safe internal temperature, because of how easily bacteria can multiply on protein-rich foods that cool too slowly. Leafy greens like spinach are best enjoyed fresh or within a day or two of cooking, given the natural nitrate content in these vegetables and how that can change with extended storage. And eggs, while genuinely one of the safest and most nutritious foods available, benefit from gentler reheating and shorter storage windows once they're peeled or mixed into a dish, mostly for quality and freshness rather than any dramatic risk. None of this requires special equipment. None of it requires giving up foods you love. It just requires a little bit of awareness about timing, how long food sits out, how it's stored, and how it's warmed back up. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you something, and I'd genuinely love to know the answer. Which of these 4 surprised you the most? Was it rice, something almost everyone reheats without a second thought? Was it chicken, the protein millions of people build their healthy meals around? Was it spinach, one of the most recommended vegetables in the world? Or was it eggs? Let me know in the comments below. And here's something simple you can do right now. Think of someone in your life who might benefit from this. A parent who lives alone and often reheats leftovers, a college student living on meal-prepped chicken and rice, anyone who could use a gentle reminder about food storage. Sharing this video with them takes 10 seconds, and it might genuinely help them. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. If you found this valuable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It truly helps more people find information like this, and it helps this channel keep bringing you clear, practical, evidence-based health content every week. My name is Dr. David Aid, and this channel is dedicated to translating real science into simple, practical steps you can use in everyday life. No fear, no hype, just information that helps you and the people you love live healthier, longer lives. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.